This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Good afternoon, Mike Lee.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm great. Really excited to have you here today. We've known each other, I think, since a couple of years before COVID, started training together out in the Hamptons. I think I first encountered you at Hamptons Jiu-Jitsu, and then we started training together at North Fork Jiu-Jitsu when they opened up on the North Fork.
Yep, that's right.
You're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Mike Jaramillo, I want to say?
It's under Eric Sherman and Jason Yang.
Okay, but from Renzo Gracie HQ.
From Renzo Gracie. Yep.
Yeah. And you are in the commercial real estate business like myself. You're on the debt side of the business. I'm excited to jump into that today. And when I first met you, I was very excited to learn that you grew up in a family business called Sangley Farms out in the North Fork of Long Island. And we'll find out a little bit about what that is for the people who don't know. And Sangley Farms is legendary, incredible organic farming business, one of the best. And all over the Hamptons, you host farmers market stands. And my mother was always such a big fan and would go to your family farm and bring home vegetables for many, many, many years of my life before I met you. And then I found out that the Lee was from Sangley. And so you're a bit of a local celebrity in my home, at least. And the first time I trained with you in jiu-jitsu, I said, this guy is strong. Farmer strength. I hope you haven't gone soft and living in the city, giving up all that farmer strength, Dad.
I hope not either. I've lived many lives, and from farm to New York City real estate and jiu-jitsu is seemingly a world apart, but there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarities. So maybe that's why there's continuity in some of the things I do. So but it's a small world in Long Island, that's for sure.
It sure is. Well, I hope to get into all that today. We'll definitely want to cover you growing up. I want to cover the family business. I want to cover you moving to the city for real estate and any sports growing up. But I also want to make sure that we don't forget at the end to talk about this incredible event series and networking group that you put together a couple of weeks ago and hopefully into the future for commercial real estate networking via jiu-jitsu. So let's just make sure that we don't forget to weave that in at the end, because I had such a good time and I can't wait to do it again.
You need the plug always. Yep.
Get the plug, baby.
Yep.
So anyway, why don't we start at the beginning? You're from Long Island, I imagine. Is that where you were born?
Yeah, I was born in Riverhead, Long Island, and I grew up for a brief period of time in East Mauritius, which I don't know if you're familiar. And then I moved to Southold, which is on the North Fork of Long Island, a few years after that, and that's where I grew up for most of my childhood. Went to Southold High School, and I have two older siblings, and my parents. We all lived there in Southold. And so that I grew up in the farming business. When my grandfather started the farm, it was actually in the 50s. The farm was originally in Queens, which is kind of difficult to imagine, that the city and the boroughs and even like upper New York, Manhattan, where Queens were farms at one time. But at that point, that's where they began, and at that time the Chinese population was exploding, and my father's side, my grandfather's side, is Chinese, so they decided that the best way to kind of capture that population growth was to farm Chinese specific vegetables, so bok choy, baby bok choy, Napa cabbage, which is called su choy, gai lan, which is a Chinese broccoli, which is kind of similar to like a broccoli rabe. Snow pea shoots, all those different types of Asian vegetables were kind of their specialty. And they would ship it, wholesale primarily to the city and different restaurants and markets for that population growth. And over time, it sort of moved further and further out east until it kind of got to East Mauritius. And then eventually through my father, when he took it over in the 80s, then he moved to Southold. It was just a little bit better, better kind of living situation, and I think the schools were a little bit better, and like that's where they could kind of find land that was good and arable for farming. All the soil in the North Fork is sandy loam, for anybody that's in the soil game, and it just really, it drains really well. It's got great nutrients, so that's why it's perfect for wine, because just it allows the water to kind of seep through the soil. So that's why there's so many vineyards now, which it wasn't the case back then.
Give a quick description of like, so Long Island looks like a fish, and at the very end of Long Island, where the tails would be, there's something called the North Fork and the South Fork. It could look like a fish or a fork, depending on how you look at it. And the South Fork is what's known as the Hamptons, for those people who've heard the Hamptons. And then right across the bay is what's called the North Fork. And even until this day, the North Fork, even though it is beginning to change, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that, there's still many farms, family farms, vineyards, family vineyards. It's one of the few places left in Long Island, especially, that has this agrarian culture.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's really changed a lot since I was a kid. I mean, at the time, I remember all the different pieces of land around our house were completely undeveloped. There was homes there, and obviously it was, there was stores and things, but I think Tanger outlet malls had just been built in the early 90s, which a lot of people come from all over the island for. But I specifically remember there was a lot of just vacant lots and woods. And little by little over time, those were getting kind of built up into homes, either for primary residence and eventually later in the 2010 era, and sort of passed more into sort of secondary homes. But the main road, which is called like County Road 48 or Sound Avenue, we farmed on both sides of it. And so I remember as a kid, I would run across the road, or I would, drive my mini bike or golf cart or tractor across the highway to get to the other side. And as a kid, there would be often times where you didn't even have to look. You could just kind of cross the highway and, just quick check and you'd be good to go, and you just cross on your merry way. And now it's like, especially during the summer months and even in the fall, because, vineyard, wine, apple, pumpkin season is hot. Sometimes there's just a significant amount of traffic. So it's definitely, the secret is out. So for sure.
The secret is out on the North Fork. I think you could thank COVID for really amplifying all the people who fled the city, not unlike myself. I mean, the reason I was out there was I had fled the city, and I'd been living out in the Hamptons for a year. That's what led me to, I had been training at Hamptons Jiu-Jitsu for a couple of years on the weekends, but that's when I started seeing you and your whole crew and all your friends and friends who are like family and people who are connected to the farm more regularly. But on the North Fork especially, it started to pick up steam in a way that you're describing, where, I mean, it could be like just a snake of traffic the whole entire way.
Yeah. And even now, like, when I drive back to the city, I'll often go at nighttime. When you head west at like the evening time on the Sunday, like there's just a steady stream of traffic going back to the city, and then going eastbound, there's nothing. So yeah, it's noticeable, but I think for the most part, it's kind of kept its character, it's kept its agrarian nature, and hoping it kind of retains its personality as time goes on, which so far I think it has. So I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to it, is because it has just a good bones to it and good personality. So
yeah, I really hope it maintains some of that charm. So maybe just if you could tell me, the kind of crew that you had growing up. My observation when I met you was that a big part of, certainly a lot of people we were training with, but also a lot of people I started to encounter were somehow related to the agricultural component, whether they worked on the farm at one point or helped out on the weekends or work at a farm stand, part of the harvest. Now they're an attorney. Now you're this accountant. Like, there just seems to be an incredible community of people who come around to lend a hand in a way that, like, that's probably more common around the country and in places where farming is still big, Ohio, and it's a place I do business in, Pennsylvania, has a measure of that, but it wasn't something I was aware of. I did see it on the show Letterkenny. For anybody who watches the show Letterkenny, I don't know if you're familiar with that show. It's a Canadian show. It's hilarious, but it's all about that life. And then I kind of saw it with you. It's like,
Right.
what was that like growing up?
You know, it's funny. I felt a little bit like the black sheep because none of my friends were actually in agriculture,
Interesting.
and all of my friends growing up, they each, I would say, each of their families owned their own businesses. So one of my friends owns the Southold Pharmacy, and at the time, the Shelter Island Pharmacy was, which was later bought by Soloviv, which is a whole nother story. My other friend owned Mullen Motors in Southold Town, and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of the families had their own businesses. None of them were in farming, and over time, what actually happened was, so the farm, grew a lot of Chinese vegetables. We also grew a lot of different just specialty crops like purple carrots and specialty herbs and Japanese eggplant and different things that you couldn't get at every farm stand. And so over time, that kind of got more and more popular. We went organic in 2005, which at the time nobody really knew what organic meant. I remember Manhattanites, driving a Mercedes BMW or whatnot at the farm stand, asking me as a young kid, what does organic mean? Like I've never heard of that. And so little bit over time, people gained more interest in agriculture. They gained more interest in organic farming and where their food was coming from. And so we saw like an influx from just kind of Central American and Spanish workers. And we saw a big influx in local kids and more Caucasian kids that were just interested in agriculture, saying, actually, this is pretty interesting. I'd like to work on a farm, or I'd like to do some of this work, and I want to know where my food comes from. So over time, I would say high school, college, and even post-college, there was more and more influx from kind of the local population that was kind of mixing with some of the Central American help that's in the agriculture business. And so now you have this really interesting mix of different people from all over that are all interested in agriculture. So you definitely see it a lot more now than you did, I would say, when I was very young. So
Yeah, that you just described me and my family who was coming out to your farm stand and
yep.
picking it up. But it really is an exceptional business, and I've always been fascinated by the work ethic that comes from growing up in that life and farming. And
yeah,
it's but also they have an amazing brand. It's not like, I mean, you guys really kind of pivoted. There's many family farm stands out in the North and South Fork that, well, some of them have gotten reputations, especially in the Hamptons.
Yep.
But you guys, you kind of had this really high end kind of special feel that was something great. Just so everybody knows, in West Hampton Beach, where my family has been for 40 years, there's a Saturday farmers market where Sangley has set it up for at least as long as I can remember. And you can join a program where whatever is fresh and seasonal and topical at that time, you have like a pre-made basket where hundreds of people come and pick up their vegetables for the week. It's amazing.
Yep. Yeah. It's really interesting how that evolved over time. It really wasn't a thing until quite recently, right? We really kind of started with a farm stand in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Just sort of on a whim. My brother wanted to sell watermelons on the side of the road, and at the time, my father's wholesale business wasn't doing that great, and so we sort of had an idea to just expand it, and so we kind of opened up a retail farm stand, and that kind of turned into farmers markets over time, and little by little, that kind of turned into a CSA, which is now I think very common, where people are getting a share of whatever's in season every single week. But it kind of evolved little by little, and even the organic thing was kind of done sort of by accident. My father just sort of said, I'm spraying these chemicals on the field and in the soil, and my kids are running through the field. They're kind of old enough. They're 5, 10, and whatever, 14 years old. They're kind of old enough to be running around. I don't want them touching the stuff or having to post signs, not to enter a field because there's toxic chemicals there. So he kind of just sprayed little by little, less and less over time. And that kind of evolved into, applying for his organic certification. But the market from the consumer base wasn't even there yet to even understand what that was, or to necessarily pay a premium for that organic product. And it just sort of happened that that's the way the market moved anyway. So we sort of, did all those things by accident and kind of just followed the trend little by little, and the market kind of responded that they wanted more and more of those specialty organic fresh greens. So I think we were very blessed to kind of have that opportunity, and the market respond. So I think if we did the same thing in the 60s, it wouldn't have worked out the same way.
Yeah. Well, to me, it always seemed like you guys were kind of ahead of the trend and like leading, but maybe in the industry, maybe other people were doing it and followed on. But at least from my perspective as a fan and a customer, it always seemed like Sangley was like kind of on the cutting edge, at least from the brand and having access to like the best stuff.
Yeah.
So the best food. Anyway,
I think my parents are perfectionists, so that makes sense. They really wanted to try and just always be better, do things right. They were farmers, but they both had their master's degrees. They were intelligent and I think thoughtful, and they worked very, very hard. My parents probably worked, 12 to 14-hour days in the summertime, and during the season, never mind off season. So they definitely had a good take on what was the right direction to take it. So
for those listening in, I pulled up the website here. For those watching, you can see I've got the map pulled up of where the farm is on the North Fork, and it's sangleyfarms.com. And I highly recommend checking it out if you're in the region. And they have some things that you can order here too.
Yep.
But just big fan, and very, very happy to learn more about it and talk about it. So
yeah.
Did you grow up playing sports?
I did, yeah. Southfield High School is really known for soccer.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of like our football, if you will, of the high school. Football, lacrosse, all those other sports really weren't popular there. And our school was really too small to kind of field some of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
My graduating class was only 92, and we were a bigger class. Some of the classes, I think, were 50, 60 kids. But so soccer was really our mainstay. And tennis was my secondary sport that I kind of was convinced by a few friends to play in junior high. And I said, I don't really want to play tennis. It's not really my cup of tea. I enjoyed the physical nature of soccer a bit more. And I played it once and I was just hooked. So that's always going to be my old man sport as I age. Will be tennis, because I'm not into golf. So that will be in the repertoire for sure. Yeah.
I grew up playing tennis my whole life. Also, I hadn't played tennis. Wow. It's crazy to say, in 10 years until this summer, I was invited to a charity tennis exhibition tournament clinic, and I picked up the racket, and it was like not one day had passed. I just immediately. Because I guess I started playing so young.
Yeah.
Tennis and golf, I have been playing since I could basically walk, and I just have it inside of me. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to go out there and beat people who play all the time, but just being able to pick it up and play and hit the ball, I was
just hit. Have fun.
Just hit.
Yeah.
It's great. I
love it. Do you like singles or doubles? Do you have a preference?
I never played doubles. I played it at camp. I went to sleepaway camp, and I played doubles then from time to time, but usually always singles.
Yeah. I was always a singles guy myself. I was a runner, just I wasn't into running, but I could just run from soccer. So I could just kind of outwork and outrun people and just get to every single ball and return every single ball, even though I wasn't the most technical tennis player of all time. So I really enjoyed the singles, and still do. So it's fun. But I got into other stuff too. I was actually really into paintball. I don't know if you ever got into that in like the 2000s.
My friends were all obsessed with paintball for a small time, but we were there. I actually just drove by right before we were having this conversation in Oceanside off Lawson Boulevard. There was an indoor place that I used to go with my friends, but I never took to it.
Oh, I loved it. I don't know if it was just like it was a paintball gun thing and it was just fun to shoot at your friends and play a sport like that. But I really liked that. And snowboarding was big. I grew up like skiing for a few years, and then I kind of my brother, my sister, and my dad all switched from skiing to snowboarding in the 90s, and I followed suit, of course, because I don't want to get left behind. And I've just been obsessed with snowboarding like ever since. It's like just such like a freeing feeling. It feels like you're flying when you're carving back and forth. And so I've been hooked about that since fifth grade, I think, since I was like 8 years old. So yeah.
Where did you grow up snowboarding?
We get skiing Vermont.
Okay.
We would go to southern Vermont primarily, so Stratton, Okemo, Mount Snow here and there, but mostly Stratton, I would say, is kind of where I spent a lot of time. So I'm really, really good at riding on ice, and I can ride in any condition. So if I get powder, I'm really, really happy. But even I've snowboarded in rain, and I'm still having a good time. So
That's great.
Yeah,
I'm
that's fun.
kindred spirit there. I actually was a competitive ski racer. I raced for my high
I didn't know
school.
that.
I raced for my college for Northeastern University for 2
Okay.
seasons before I retired on the southern New England tracks.
Nice.
We used to go to all those same mountains. My parents had a condo at Okemo when I was growing up, so it was like that was like the biggest part of my life. Before jiu-jitsu, lacrosse and skiing were my whole entire life. I mean,
okay.
that
I'm learning new things about you.
Yeah.
What type of racing did you do?
Slalom and giant slalom. So slalom and GS.
I was gonna say you're probably definitely GS for sure. So
yeah, that was
nice.
It was that like the divisions that I was in southern New England, there wasn't too much downhill unless you were at the elite level. In my high school, they only ran 2 races. So it was on Wednesdays and Fridays. I was in 2 leagues. So on Wednesdays we skied at a mountain called Berkshire East, which is in the hills of Massachusetts, and then at Wachusett. And then New England's would be up in New Hampshire somewhere. You know, one year it was at I think Bromley, and another year it was at another mountain. And then when I was in college, I was in the NEPSAC, like it was a Southern New England ski. So every weekend for 6 weekends, it would be at a different mountain: Stratton, Okemo, Bromley, Sunapee. And so each week you would go, and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday you'd be on the mountain, and it was a lot, especially
I think a lot of people that race end up saying something similar where they're like, I liked it. Or I think some people always respond like, it was intense. Like it was all day, every day. I was constantly cold. You know, you take the jacket off, you race, you put the jacket back on. So yeah, I feel for you.
It's actually very similar to jiu-jitsu tournaments, because in a jiu-jitsu tournament, you show up in the morning and you might be waiting around all day to compete. You don't exactly know when you're going to go. They're getting a little bit better at telling you, but a year and a half ago, July, I competed in the tournament grappling industries. It said scheduled me for 10:30. I didn't fight until 2:30. So I kept warming up, and it kept moving back the time slots.
It's a mental game at that point.
Oh yeah, exactly. Same thing with skiing. And I got the pans on this upcoming Friday. This episode is going to air a week from tomorrow, so Wednesday of next week. So I will have competed by the time this goes live. But in a couple of days, I have the pans.
Yep. Well, good luck. Good luck, and you're going to do amazing, I'm sure. So
I'm excited.
Exciting.
So anyway, so you grow up farming, you grow up playing sports. I know you went to Cornell, incredible school. And when did you become what came first, real estate or jiu-jitsu?
Real estate came first. So when I went to Cornell, I was a business major. I was able to get state tuition, which was amazing. You know, paid like half of what you would normally pay in tuition, and you know, did the typical business, marketing, finance classes, and then did an agriculture minor because I wasn't sure at the time what I was going to do or if I was going to go back to the family business. And those are all my favorite classes. So it was like soil, insects, all that stuff was really fascinating. Still is. But I just had a feeling that I wanted to do something different. I kind of was trying to follow this feeling of learning, of growth, and doing something different was that to me, and the city kind of represented that. So I kind of landed on New York City because it was obviously close by, and it felt uncomfortable. It felt completely different from like what I grew up doing with, you know, putting my hands in soil and driving tractors in the sun. And so I kind of steered into that, and I was able to kind of connect at my current shop now, HKS Real Estate. And at the time, they'd just kind of started the company. They'd spun off another company, and I took a shot, and I basically just sort of didn't really know what I was getting into, is probably the nice way of saying it. And, we're like a commercial mortgage broker. So we basically broker loans on commercial multifamily buildings in like the middle market space. So it could be for rental housing building. It could be for a hotel and industrial building. It could be for a developer that's building a ground up project in Brooklyn or in, the Bronx. So I just was always fascinated by real estate and was obviously connected in it through the agriculture community. And so I always had an interest in that specifically. And from there, I basically just took a shot in the dark, and that was 14 years ago. So I think I was very fortunate that I ended up liking the business. I ended up liking the city, and I ended up just kind of falling into a rhythm in a place that like felt good and felt right. And I kind of continued to steer into that uncomfortableness. So I started in 2011 after I graduated college. And then I didn't start jiu-jitsu until 2013. I basically put my head down and worked crazy, insane hours for a few years until I could just kind of get off the ground. I didn't really have anything established. I didn't have a book of business. I didn't have any money. And so I just had to kind of work with my head down, nights, weekends, you name it. I was reading articles, I was researching things, I was cold calling guys during the week, just doing anything I could to basically kind of get ahead and trying to figure out what was what, because I didn't have much to go off of. And after I closed my first deal in 6 months, and it was with a very, very challenging developer in Brooklyn who was building a ground up condo project, which at the time in 2011 was sort of revolutionary because people were so scarred from 2008. I remember cold calling guys and saying, I could broker a construction loan for you to build XYZ project. And at the time, people would be actually surprised. They would say, well, how can you get a construction loan in 2011? Like, aren't all these lenders out of business? Who's financing these? And so I was able to kind of put together a deal, obviously with a ton of help from my now partners at HKS. They helped kind of guide me through the process, and was able to pull off this closing in 6 months for a very small, in the commercial world, $2.6 million loan. And I said to myself, like, if I can do this, like, I think I can make this business work. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to like propel me further and continue on and keep going. So it wasn't until a few years after that where I kind of felt a bit more settled. I had a bit more regular deal flow. I could actually support myself from an income standpoint before I kind of started thinking about, well, what's out there? What should I be doing from like an exercise standpoint? And I was a bit tired of lifting weights at that time. I was, sick of running on a treadmill, and I was like, maybe I should do some martial arts. And of course, I'm like the classic 90s kid that wanted to grow up like doing karate, but never did it. And so I kind of started hunting around in the martial arts realm. And one of the guys who worked for us at the office at the time said, have you ever thought about jiu-jitsu? And I didn't know what it was. I looked it up, and I was immediately like completely drawn into it. And I was like, this is pretty cool. So my initial plan was to go around and go to 5 or 10 different gyms and try out which ones I liked, and then kind of, figure out from there what I was going to do and which gym I was going to start at. And I walked into one gym, and the instructor for the class was a UFC fighter at the time, Sapo Natal, who you know.
Of course.
And someone said, I didn't even know who he was. And someone said, you know who that is? And I was like, no. And they said, that's Sapo from the UFC. And I was immediately like, completely enthralled with that. I was like, wow, we're getting taught by a UFC fighter. This is amazing. And so I ended up doing my first class, and I never left. I never went to the second gym. I never shopped around at any other gym. I just stayed there. And I've been there for 12 and a half years.
And that's
this January will be 13
HQ.
years. Renzo Gracie HQ on West 30th Street. So it ended up just being obviously a very good gym to train at, and just had so many amazing like teachers and partners, and many friends over the years that have come through there, and been very thankful for that. So yeah, it's been an awesome experience.
That's amazing. I'm going to rewind the tape a little bit because I have a number of questions. But how did you meet your partners originally from HKS? What led to joining that firm?
Sure. So I originally was unsure of what I wanted to do when I was in college. And my sister put me in touch with her boyfriend at the time, who is now my brother-in-law. But he suggested that I speak to his business partner, and just get a feel for like the real estate business. And so I spoke to his partner, and he basically described the real estate business to me in, the course of 30, 40 minutes. And at the end of, the 30, 40 minutes, he said to me, "You're going to come work for me." And at the time, I was completely confused. I, didn't know it was a job interview. I hadn't prepared anything. And he said, "Just come work for me. Like you'll figure it out." And he was partners with my now brother-in-law. And so I remember calling my brother-in-law, and I said, "Did you put your partner up to this? Did you guys have this conversation? Did you kind of prepare this? Like, is this what you guys had wanted?" And he's like, "No, I didn't put him up to anything. He just said that out of the blue. He must have liked you or something." So I asked him, I said, "Well, what should I do?" And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" So it sort of just happened. I didn't really have a plan to work in the brokerage business or end up working with family, but now I'm sort of in another family business at HKS. So at the time, they actually were, my sister and my now brother-in-law were not married. They had been dating for many, many years through college. And so at the time when we started working together, we sort of said, "All right, let's test this out. Let's see if I like this business, if it works, if it's a fit, if we like each other. If it's not, we'll part ways, no hard feelings." And later on, they got married. He was then my brother-in-law. And a few years later, we kind of said, "Yeah, this works really well." And I was getting traction in the business. I was getting a bit more successful in the sales. And we decided to partner together. So it sort of just happened completely, I guess, just on its own, and ended up being a great fit. So I'm very thankful for that.
I mean, listen, you had an incredible upbringing in a world-class family business that instills amazing work ethic. You went to a top school. Is Cornell an Ivy League school? Is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You went to an Ivy League school.
It's considered bottom tier for the Ivies, but Ivy
I don't know from any of that. But I knew it was a very good school. So yeah, so you go to you got the farmer work ethic, amazing family business. You come out of school, and now, of course they're going to try to recruit you. I mean, you're a stud.
The one thing I knew how to do that nobody could take away was just work ethic, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I could say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I, could get by, decently intelligent, but like the one thing I knew I had was hustle. And that was one thing that you need in the real estate business in particular, especially in New York City, was hustle. And I remember calling guys and saying, they'd say like, they'd be on the phone, "How old are you? Like, how long you been doing this?" And I'd say, "I've been doing this about 6 months. I've been doing this a year, but nobody's going to work harder than me." And I would specifically call guys on a Friday afternoon at 6:00, or I would call a guy on the Jewish holidays when some of the guys were off working, or call them on a Sunday when I knew that they were also probably working and I would be working as well. And so little by little, I could just get ahead of other people that just weren't really paying attention, or they weren't hustling as hard. Because that's all I had. That's all I really had. So,
I mean, it's such an amazing story, and so inspiring to anybody who's listening to this. I mean, to make it in New York City in your business without connections is so hard. It's so unlikely. I can't stress enough the sheer volume of nepotism. And I'm not putting my nose down at it, because I come out of a family business. As a matter of fact, I believe that you should work every advantage you have. If you have connections, but the people, the entrenched families and the entrenched networks that exist in New York City real estate, it is so hard to break in. You got to out hustle these people. And first of all, these kids that are coming out that do have nepotism, you think they're not working hard? I know kids, they are some of the hardest workers I know, and they have every single connection.
Yeah.
So people talk, talk about it all the time. Like some of my friends, my richest friends who are not successful. And then I also have incredibly wealthy friends, but they're the hardest workers because their fathers were so hard on them and they pushed them so hard, so much harder than you could. It's like, would be like having the best coach in the world. It's like having John Danaher as your father.
Right.
I know he doesn't have kids, but so that's what you're competing with in New York. And I'm sure other major cities too. But what you do specifically is extreme, and it's all relationships. Like I can't stress that enough for people. It's like the only reason that you would win out over somebody else who's doing the same thing is because you're just a great guy who gets the job done. Yep. Not because you're like, you have some magical connection to the banks. Like, you're not doing magic. You're just outworking the rest. And it's really hard to get deals done.
Right. And I ended up falling back on a lot of the principles that my father taught me in our farming business, which was like just very straightforward things. I think like it's one thing to work hard. It's another to sort of like work smart and work like intelligently or thoughtfully or do the right thing. And a lot of time my father would teach me, like, if you shake someone's hand and you tell them you're going to do something, you do it and you don't go back on your word. And I never forgot that because, I think especially in like a fast-paced business environment where people are constantly raking up deals, things are said or things are promised and they're not always delivered. And I made sure that, like, no matter how hungry I was and no matter how anxious I was to do a deal or make a fee and put some food on the table, was not to forget that. And so I hold that now. I would rather walk away from something than to promise something that I didn't feel good about or think I could follow through with. And I think people respond to that, right? Whether you're in the nepotism world or you're from a family business or you're someone new, it's like people, whether they consciously know it or not, they pick up that energy and they recognize it. So that helped me a lot and still does.
Yeah. What are some of your dad's simple truths?
Make hay while the sun shines.
Wow,
I mean, that one is so true. I mean, I remember rates were down at 3% interest and people were borrowing money like crazy, like 2014, 2015, 2016. People were buying stuff like crazy. They were buying real estate buildings at a 3% or 3.5% cap rate. And it was flying. And I remember thinking, like, this will not last. You read every kind of little article or book about real estate, the average real estate cycle is 7 years. And I knew it wouldn't last. And it went on for a good bit. Like, we had a good run of 10 years or so of the cycle, maybe longer. And then of course, COVID happened, which was its own challenge. And then rates shot up, which really put a dampen on the business. But 2023 was my worst year in my entire career, because so little people were borrowing money because rates were very expensive. But that is a principle that I hold now, is just when it's moving, you got to move because it's not going to last. Maybe on a scale of years, but you gotta capitalize on that.
It's interesting. You and I were running parallel lives because I started buying Manhattan apartment buildings. My dad and I, in partnership with one of my closest friends and longtime business and investing partners, Ben Zeises, and we were running around Manhattan buying deals. Now, in 2010 and 2011, when we started, we could not even get people excited about wanting to buy great deals, 6 and 7 caps.
Right.
And we were going to these meetings to syndicate our deals. And I remember like sitting down with this one doctor. I'm not going to call her out, but if she listens to this, she knows who she is because she told me how upset she was. She never invested. But anyway, people were so paralyzed by fear in the market.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting 4 Manhattan deals done in that time stretch. 3 in Washington Heights and 1 in the East Village. As a matter of fact, we kept getting outcompeted by Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner bought like over 100 deals in the East Village during that time span. We got 1 deal done. So we own those buildings from 2011. And I remember in 2018, we exited the buildings And I said, Dad, don't we want to hold these forever? This is like gold in New York City. And my dad looked at me and he said, Jordan, there's nothing wrong with making a little money.
Right.
And I was like, wow, what that was. And then I don't know how in tune you are with this part of the business, but we were buying a class of multifamily real estate in the rent regulated markets, which is regulated by the city. And they tell you what you can raise your rents by each year. Sometimes it was 3%, 4%, depending on it. And the game of that business is that once you invest a certain amount of money into a rent regulated apartment, then you can bring it to the free market and that will increase the value of the building exponentially. And so we were doing great. We exited. And then in 2018, there was a change in government and they completely shut down that business. And my dad said, it's better to be lucky than good. And he said, you see, if we would have owned those buildings, even to this day, I think they just changed the laws this year in 25. So from 18 to 25, you would have been smoked owning those buildings underwater.
Yeah.
So I love that. So you got, what do you say? You got to make hay when the sun is shining. Is that it?
Yep. Make hay while the sun shines. Yeah. And it's true. It's, I think there's both philosophies in our business. Some guys say, hold this forever. And especially like someone in the Chinese community, they say like, hold this building forever, never, ever sell. And I think I'm probably a moderate in that regard. Some things maybe you do never sell, but I think most things, when the number is right and you make money and you know things can change and you're aware that you're in a political environment like New York, which is pretty tough to do business in, sometimes it's good to just take some chips off the table, take a win and move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. So
I think this is where business jiu-jitsu comes in. I mean, there's no one right way to do jiu-jitsu. It's about timing. It's about attributes. It's about what's going on in your body, what's going on in your life, how old you are. You know, there's seasonality, and being a great business person is also learning from your wins and learning from your losses. But there's no like, some people are really good at holding and some people are really good at transacting. I mean, I have people in my network that are deal junkies and they just are incredibly good at buying and selling, and they know how to do deal. They know how to do. And then I know other people who are in third generation family businesses and they're just harvesting their portfolio and working on leasing. And there's no right answer. It's just what is good. It's good. What's good for you. And if you have an economic model that you can layer over your business, and if you can make it work and make it profitable, then good on you. But there's no one right way to do it. It's just what's good for you. Yeah. And another. All right. So let's bring it back to the jiu-jitsu for a second. So you ended back at Henzo's HQ, and now you're training. I imagine at this point your career is starting to pick up a little gas. By the way, I don't know if you would say this about yourself, but it's well documented on the internet. You were a rising star during this period. You're accruing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transaction volume. I imagine by now, because I saw an old article, that you've done over $1 billion worth of transacted deals. So to say you start jiu-jitsu, you make your first cold calls, now you're being recognized as a rising star and you're doing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions. What is that time like in your life?
Fun. It's really fun. It's sort of like vindication, right? Of like everything that you put on the line and everything that you work for can come to fruition. And it's like, it's sort of the American dream, right? Of like, if I put in the work and I go about this smartly, like this can happen. Like what I imagine in my head can occur in reality with enough time and enough patience. And the same in jiu-jitsu, right? It's like when I walked in the doors those first day, I was so in love with jiu-jitsu, and I still am. And I said to myself, I will not stop training until I'm a black belt. And everybody that listens probably knows it takes 10 plus years to get your black belt. Yeah. And it took me 12, and maybe it took a little longer, but like I was never going to stop until I got it. And it's amazing. Like when you have that focus, there's nothing that can stop you. And anything you dream of can become reality, which is an amazing thing. So, yeah.
Well, most of the people who listen to this podcast listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but this is on YouTube. And Mike and I both are in frame in the video right now, and we both have our American flags behind us. So you're talking to two patriots, two people who believe in the American dream. And I couldn't agree with you more. I truly believe this country provides an incredible opportunity if you're willing to take it. And it doesn't matter what your background is and where you're from. I mean, I'm I'm the grandchild, children of immigrants, my great grandparents on one side, and my family arrived in this country with less than nothing, less than nothing, a suitcase. I mean, the stories are crazy to hear, fleeing Europe for a life, living in tenements, scraping together. My grandfather told me stories for years about owning his parents had a laundromat in Long Beach.
Wow.
They had a house, they moved into the basement in the summer to rent out the rooms. I mean, the stories are just incredible. Your family coming here and farming, I mean, it's just so powerful.
Yeah, it's inspiring, and it doesn't mean that it's easy too, right? I think we have plenty of issues in today's day and world, and it's a tough world out there still. So it's by no means easy, and so I try and where I can try and help other people or younger kids do the same, because I've been in those shoes. I know what that feeling is like, to just be in like this big world and not have, your foot in the door to like just get a shot, to just catch a break, to just like, to get in somewhere. So, but it can be done. That's for sure.
Absolutely can be done. And I love what you said, your dad's advice about doing what you say. I mean, it's so important to be that guy. And through the course of deal making, and I'm positive you've encountered it. I think you kind of briefly mentioned it in passing on this conversation. You are going to see so much shenanigans. You are going to see so many lies, bad people, bad actors, bad faith. And just like in jiu-jitsu, like no matter what gets thrown at you, you still have to win. They might be smelly, they might be dirty, they might cheat, bend your fingers, scratch you, bite you. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to do that back with the purest expression of the technique. You can completely make your way through the jiu-jitsu world not being like that. And the people who I see who fail at both jiu-jitsu and in business are the ones who start to lean too heavily on the aspects of the game that don't help you get to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And in your world, especially, I mean, I'm on the other side as a principal, doing deals. And one of the things that I always say when I'm trying to get deals done, especially with another side that's not being cooperative, is that my job is to win, not prove I'm right. Sometimes through the course of deal making, everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to be like, the roof is leaking, you have to fix it. Right. And what I found is like because of jiu-jitsu, like there is always a way to figure out how to navigate a path to not proving that I'm right. It's just figuring out a way to win.
Yeah.
That's
a hard thing. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, I think that's what's compelling about jiu-jitsu is like, it's a balance of having enough ego to know that you're capable of something, but not too much ego that's going to get you in over your skis and get you into trouble. And I think it's a difficult line to kind of hold, because you have to have some ego to exist. Otherwise you would just kind of shudder into a hole. But you
would have never made those calls.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, but it's important for sure. Yeah.
So good. I didn't forget. If you wouldn't mind telling everybody, especially all our New York City real estate people, like what you got going on, how this materialized, where your head was at, and what we could see for the future.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a commercial real estate jiu-jitsu networking group that I put together. It's called BJJREA, Jiu-Jitsu Real Estate Alliance. And our plan is basically we're going to have a monthly jiu-jitsu networking group of commercial real estate folks that are going to train at Renzo Gracie HQ. And it's just going to be once a month, probably on Thursdays. We just did our first one in September, which Jordan, you were there. And it's going to be a small exclusive group. I'm not interested in making it gigantic. I think it's more important to have quality than quantity. So it's for blue belts and up. It's not for beginners or anyone that's new to training. You can train from any school. You're more than welcome to come. And it is invite only. So you would just have to reach out to me and just connect. And there's all types of folks from, real estate brokers to developers, to guys that work more on the finance side at like the Apollos of the world, and everybody in between. There's some guys that are lenders. So it's a really good group, and it's growing. So I think there's a lot of folks that are looking for other ways to network aside from, getting drinks or playing golf, which are both great things in their own right. But I don't think anyone who trains jiu-jitsu is going to say no to getting deals done and connecting on business and training. So
Yeah.
so that's the goal.
I thought it was a testament to who you are that you put other principals in a room with other brokers, and you're not afraid to do that. That just shows you what kind of guy you are. And, I'm of an abundance mindset myself. I know so many people who would never, ever do that. I think it's the total wrong attitude.
Yep.
When you get great people together that have a similar interest, and you help other people, it always comes back.
Yeah. No, there's another commercial mortgage broker that's in the group, and we're friends, and he trains at Henzo's, and it's like, it's all water under the bridge. Like, there's enough business out there for everyone, and it doesn't help to just fight. So just on the mats, at least. So yeah.
I had such a great time, and I love meeting all those guys. And a number of people reached out to me. I passed them your information, but if anyone fits the bill for people in the commercial real estate industry, especially principals, developers, it's a great group. I hope we get to do it a lot, and I hope we get some deal making going from it. It would be so cool if we could get some homegrown real estate deals done. I think it's going to be a great environment, hopefully over the course of the next few years. I heard a great thing at the end of 24. It said survive in 25. And now I think that's been the case for a lot of us. And we're going to thrive in 26. That's my prayer.
I hope so too. So far, so good.
Good.
Yep.
Well, let me share your information here on the screen so people can find you. First of all, HKS Real Estate Advisors, hks.com. And you can find Mike Lee's information there. Please reach out to him if you need any commercial mortgage brokerage, if you're looking to do a loan. You do bridge lending also, or you do traditional finance and construction mostly?
Yeah, we really touch everything. Land financing, ground up construction, bridge, permanent loans on cash flowing assets, and everything in between. Yep.
Yeah. Connect with him on LinkedIn. He's here. Not a big social media guy anymore. Back in the day, used to get a couple good laughs, but he's out of the social media game. So connect with him on LinkedIn or shoot him an email. Here's some of his articles that he didn't mention about himself, but I'm happy to brag about him because I feel very, very strongly. And then, of course, last, big shout out to his family business, Sangley Farms. In the back of my mind, I'm rooting for you to somehow end up there one day and keep this business going for many, 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 many more generations. I know your brother and sister are still involved in the business.
My brother is, my brother. Yep.
Yeah.
I've always got my eye on the ag business, so I won't be far in any regard.
Good.
So
good.
Yep.
All right. Well, so grateful for you, Mike. Thanks for always training with me. Mike's an absolute stud and beast on the jiu-jitsu mat. Super, super technical and farmer strong. And just looking forward to our next HKS BJJ real estate event.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Jordan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Awesome.